Well, whether man is the driving force behind climate change is a contentious issue for many. But what has gained rather wide consensus is that our climate is changing, and with it, the communities and industries that are tied to it. Here's our Lisa Hines.
When you're dependent on the weather for your livelihood, like agriculture is, you have to be smart with your land management. In 2013, the USDA's Grazinglands Research Laboratory in El Reno became one of 7 regional climate hubs for the United States to help farmers and ranchers understand the climate and how to adapt to it. Climate change is a reality.
The fact that the weather's changed, this is what means climate has changed. That's because weather adds up to climate. We can't wait for things to hold still and then adapt. We have to adapt while they're evolving.
Jeanne Schneider is with the USDA's Grazinglands Research Laboratory and says adapting to climate change requires flexibility.
So that's the first part, is changing the way you look at the situation, the way what your expectations are as to what's going to come, because right now every year is different.
And that's what the research at the USDA laboratory is designed to do, to look at how to adapt to our changing climate. Jeanne Steiner is the director at the laboratory and says they conduct different research experiments based on agricultural needs.
Because there are so many pressures on agriculture with growing populations, the variabilities of our climate, the very rapid dynamics of the economic markets and the agricultural markets, that the farmers are really wanting a different type of information to help them evaluate their risk in a more timely fashion and help them evaluate alternatives.
Like what crops to plant in a drought situation. Jurgen Garbrecht specializes in hydraulic engineering and says they're using the past to look at the future.
As you know, the weather changes from year to year, and the crop productivity, crop production is changing from year to year. We also have decade scale variations where for 10 years it stays wet or dry, like the Dust Bowl years, like the years of 1960s, like the year of 1970s and 80s and 90s where it was a wet period. And we're looking at climate change that is happening now and goes into the future to establish what we are going to be encountering in the future, to establish what kind of conservation program needs will be necessary to mitigate the effect of climate change.
And driving some of the research is the court of public opinion, like the effect of the methane production of cattle. Ken Turner is a research animal scientist and is looking at how much methane grass-fed cattle actually produce.
Part of this is we're looking at the frame size of cattle, small, medium, large, extra large frame cattle in this research, and starting to identify which cattle are more efficient at utilizing the forages and hopefully minimizing their methane output so that we can start breeding these animals then to fit this and be productive in this environment.
But according to research animal scientist Jim Neal, it's not a quick study.
So I think that we need to keep in mind that this is a long-term research project, and again, we're trying to collect data that gives us something to go off of as far as when we think about greenhouse gases and climate change.
As a regional climate hub, the laboratory helps connect local farmers and ranchers with the right information for their needs. Research soil scientist Patrick Starks.
What we're charged with is getting the technology out there in the hands of somebody like NRCS or Crop Scouts or somebody like that who can then take that information and answer the questions for them. But we can certainly direct them to the research, and probably the people they need to get in contact with.
With the help of partners like Clay Pope, a consultant working with USDA to help get the word out.
We're working with Redlands Community College and with the USDA Climate Hub for the Southern Plains here at Fort Reno to try to help build together partnerships, to try to bring people together, to try to do things where we can have all the different pieces of the puzzle when we're talking about climate change brought to one place, provide that table, help assemble those pieces, hopefully give us a little bit better picture about what we're looking at for the future, what tools producers need to have to adapt to climate change. Are there some mitigation strategies that we can look at? What questions don't we know the answers to? And quite frankly, what other questions should we be asking?
A tall order, but one Schneider says will happen.
We have to figure out what our options are. And that's the job of the Climate Hub, is to help facilitate that development and make sure that information is available to everyone who's reaching out for it.
And Schneider says what she needs most is to hear from producers out there what is working for them and what isn't, so she can spread the word to everyone in the region.